The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
It's time to go on the mat. The Cedar Valley's longest-running radio show devoted entirely to wrestling. Brought to you by Rolling Ford and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum on 1650 The Fan.
Welcome to On the Mat. I am Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, joined by Stephen Neal's personal chauffeur, Doug Van Gelder. Doug, I know you had a good time with Stephen Neal. There's this microphone right here. You're a ways away. You talk right into that. And
it was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had.
Well,
it's almost up there with that trip we made after 9/11.
Well, I knew you would enjoy it.
Yeah, it was great.
I'm glad you did. We have a guy on the line on our shortened show. We have a Chicago Cubs game, so get a chance to enjoy a shortened show today. But why not have the best? We have Gerald Brisco, a WWE talent scout, and he also happens to be a former amateur wrestler, grew up in Oklahoma, went to Oklahoma State. His brother was an NCAA wrestling champion for Oklahoma State. But get this, with all of his Oklahoma roots, he likes Iowa more than he likes Oklahoma. Welcome, Gerald.
Well, thank you for the great introduction. By the way, it's always quality over quantity, and you got quality today.
Well, that's exactly right. We went for the best, and we want to really dig deep into what we have coming up on July 20th through 22nd. We have the 2017 class of the George Tragos Luthez Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame coming up. Let's talk first about a guy that you recruited who is going to be on the card on Friday night, Friday, July 22nd. Shelton Benjamin, a guy that you recruited, was a two-time All-American for the University of Minnesota. People who follow amateur wrestling should know him well because he spoiled the party for Iowa at the 98 National Duels, pinned West Hand. You had a hand in getting him to the WWE. How good of an athlete was he during his time with your company?
Well, Sheldon, he was a remarkable athlete, and I'm almost embarrassed to say I stumbled on the Sheldon Benjamin, and if it hadn't been for great coach Jay Robinson, I probably wouldn't have recruited Sheldon. That's how naive I was. Of course, I wasn't doing the job full time then. I was just looking, part-time and kind of enjoying the product of amateur wrestling. And of course, saw Brock Lesnar. And I'd been working so much with WWE that I really didn't have a chance to, really go in and study a lot about, certain years you get busier than others. And then during Shelton's year, I really wasn't paying any attention to recruiting because that really wasn't my job. Then all of a sudden a freak like Brock steps out, and kind of changed my focus. But anyway, I called Jay, of course, on Brock, and Jay said, I got a bonus for you too. Yeah, what's that? He said, I got what I like to call my salt and pepper team. He said, I got the only guy in the country that can stand toe-to-toe with Brock Lesnar, named Sheldon Benjamin. You take him as a package deal. Yes, sir. You know how Jay drives the bargain, and that was a bargain that I came out winning on. But that's how I got him. Then we got him to tryout camp, and the guy was probably one of the best athletes that's ever attended a WWE tryout camp, and we've ever had the pleasure of enjoying working in the WWE. The guy's just a phenomenal athlete. He could do anything you ask him to do, and stuff that you never dreamed a human being could do. And he was not only a great wrestler, but he was a great football player in school, and just all-around athlete, and all-around good person. That's the important thing there. Jay knows how to build a good person, and he built a good one when he recruited Benjamin.
We are on the mat with Gerald Brisco of the WWE. Although this is the 2017 George Tragos Luthez Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame inductions on July 20th through 22nd. You could call this Brisco Boys reunion because we're going to have Shelton Benjamin here. And then we're also going to have American Alpha, two guys that have amateur wrestling backgrounds, Jason Jordan and Chad Gable. And they have different names when they were in college, but we won't talk about that. We're going to talk about them being there, Jerry. Two great athletes. Chad Gable, a.k.a. Chaz Betts, was an Olympian. Two great athletes coming to Waterloo. That's going to be fun for you to see a couple of your guys being on our card.
Well, it certainly is, and it's a credit to those guys. Both of them have worked very, very hard. Jason Jordan, Nathan Everhart, and real life. Everybody knows Nathan. What a great athlete. He reminds me so much of Benjamin. If Benjamin ever had a clone, Jason Jordan would be close to being Shelton Benjamin's clone. Jason's a tremendous athlete and was a tremendous competitor. Number one, he was ranked as high as, I think, number 2 or number 3 in the NCAA heavyweight rankings when he was a year, and a Big Ten contender. And then the guy's turned into one heck of a sports entertainer for WWE, as has Chad Gable. And I kind of choke and rev him about using the name Gable and tell him, you got to really step up. You just can't be an ordinary guy if you're using that name.
On the mat with Gerald Brisco. He's going to be in Waterloo, Iowa once again for the George Tragos Luthez Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame inductions. He's the president of our selection committee, and we have another guy that comes in annually, didn't make it last year, but he's going to get a chance to come back this year. Jim Ross, what a wealth of knowledge he is, what a talent he is to not only have the talent himself, but just to see talent in others. It's going to be great to have him back, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is, and we don't know how lucky we are, Kyle, to have Jim Ross involved with us there. I mean, Jim Ross is probably one of the most influential sports announcers in the entire industry, and people listen to him. Well over 1 million followers on Twitter, and the guy's a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of contacts, and he's a guy that volunteers his time to come to Waterloo, Iowa. And unlike me, where Waterloo's my favorite place in the world to go to on part-time basis, JR has another opinion of Waterloo, and it's not so high, but he's an Okie, and he just hadn't been there enough. But he's starting to love the people. He really loves the organization. He's dedicated to it, and he gives his own time and money up to make that trip from Norman, Oklahoma, which I kind of choke on saying sometimes Norman, But anyway, he makes he sacrifices his time just about every year. Last year he had a conflict of booking, but this year he's cleared the date, because he enjoys coming up. He enjoys the people. He enjoys the camaraderie. And like you said, we have 2 WWE stars there. And all 3 of those guys we talked about, Benjamin, Betts, and Jordan, they're all eventually have a place on that Waterloo wall and that Tragus Fez wing of the beautiful Dan Gable Museum in Waterloo, Iowa. In the future, all 3 of those young men, and I think you'll agree with me, will have a spot front and center on the wall there one day. Future Hall of Famers, in other words, and. JR knows that. JR sees the talent. JR is involved. JR helped build one of the strongest rosters that professional wrestling has ever seen, back when he was director of talent relations. So we're fortunate to have guys like him. J.J. Dillon will be making a return. And, of course, our award-winning nominees and winners are fantastic. The Baron will be back. It's just a cast of 1,000, and it's such a friendly environment. Kyle, you got to CAC, and they do a wonderful job. We've all learned so much from that organization, and a lot of it you brought back to Iowa and incorporating into the Tragus Fez wing there of the Dan Gable Museum. And it's fan-friendly. Our celebrities, our athletes that we bring in, there's no ego. They check the ego when they walk through that airline door. They're just they enjoy meeting the people. It's a one-on-one conversation most of the time where you can walk right up to them and talk. It's one of the most fan-friendly places that you'll ever find. If you're a sport, if you're a fan of wrestling of any kind, these guys are athletes. They cross demographics and from amateur into professional. They're people persons, their personality. they're engaging in conversation. So it's a wonderful experience, not only for the talent that comes that we work so hard to get all year long, but they enjoy it as much as the fans do. And I know it's certainly a treat. I've been told so many times what a wonderful time people have there in Iowa at our celebration. And I, in return, tell them, they're the ones that make it a wonderful time. And, if you're a fan of any type of wrestling, come out and visit the museum. It's just to visit the museum. If you hadn't done it, shame on you, because it's a wonderful place to visit, run by wonderful people.
All right, Jerry, we have to take our first break. We're going to be back with more with Gerald Brisco next on the mat.
When all you want is sports, all you need is 1650 The Fan.
We are back on the mat. I am Kyle Klingman of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, along with Doug Van Gelder. Our guest today on our shortened show, Gerald Brisco of WWE. He's a Hall of Famer, member of the George Tragos Luthez Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. He also wrestled at Oklahoma State, has a son who was going to be on the card this year again, Wes Brisco, who also wrestled in Florida. And that has to be fun for you when you get a chance to see your son doing so well and one of the top talents in the country. Has to be fun for you to come to Waterloo and know that there's going to be two Briscos.
Well, it certainly is. I'm not outnumbered when he comes there. And Wes really enjoys it. And he gets a taste of that tradition early, what it's like to be in Iowa and what it's like to compete in Iowa and get to make friends up there. And he's a people person too, and he loves coming up there. He loves entertaining the fans, and I think they really like him and interact well with him. So it's a family affair, and that's what wrestling's all about, and that's what we try to make the environment there, is where it's a family affair.
Let's talk about a guy that you are an advocate for, who I think is a fantastic award winner, the recipient this year for the Luthez World Heavyweight Championship Award, Magnum TA Terry Allen, who was a state wrestling champion in Virginia. He's getting that award this year. Had a shortened career because of an accident outside of the ring, but what do you remember about what he brought to professional wrestling and how good he could have been had he not gotten injured?
Well, that's one of our biggest tragedies that we've had. This young man's career cut short by a mistake, and he admits his mistake and doesn't want anybody to repeat it. And but what a man he's fought through. The doctors told him he would never be able to walk again, stand again, or function as a normal human being. And it's that wrestling mentality and that wrestling background that makes you fight. When people say you can't do something, it makes you want to fight them, And Terry was no different, than any of the rest of us. When he was told that, he said, "We'll see, we'll see." And here the guy is now. He's functioning, as well as you and I, and what an attitude he brings to it. Last year, as you know, he came out and visited us, and he went to the wrong Waterloo. He went to Waterloo, Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
Him and his son were driving, and they were having a wonderful time. But he told a great Dan Gable story. You remember this Dan Gable story? And so he's been a fan all of his life, and to get to interact with Dan. And once again, that's all part of the environment there, is interacting with not only your favorite pro superstars, but the one and only Dan Gable. How many times you get to interact with him? And then Dan's a gracious host, and always got a smile on his face, and always got his hand out ready to shake a hand and pose for a picture. And that's what you love about being there. And so, but Magnum TA was a great athlete, and if he hadn't had his career cut short, he'd probably be one of the most famous sports entertainer professional wrestlers that we've ever heard of in our entire lives. He was that good and that charismatic, and the guy was just phenomenal. But it was his amateur background, he'll always state, that helped him get him there.
We are on the mat with Gerald Brisco, member of the George Tragos Luthez Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. He's going to be in Waterloo, Iowa for our Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame weekend. That is July 20 through 22. Make sure you contact the museum if you want tickets or have interest in that. And we mentioned your credentials. You went to Oklahoma State. You were at WWE. But even more important, you went to high school with my mom.
Imagine that. Yeah, when you first told me, I just couldn't remember. I couldn't imagine, running into Linda Lee, the beautiful Linda Lee, son in Waterloo, Iowa. But I know your background. There's nothing you can pull over me because I'll just go to Mama.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You better behave.
Now, when are you going to get a cowboy wrestler in the ring in WWE? Have you got your eye on anyone right now?
Well, I'm always working on it. There's a young man down there now. Matter of fact, he's from hometown, Blackwell, Oklahoma. And he's a junior, I believe, this year. So he got 2 more years. But being a Blackwell guy, of course I got. He's 6'5". Of course I got my eye on him.
Sure, you do.
He's an Okie. He's an Okie from Blackwell. So
yep. How about Ty Walls at Virginia Tech?
Well, Ty's a wonderful young man, and he's got his mindset, on 2020. And we never discourage these guys from chasing a dream. We don't want to be that guy that, hey, you got to sign with us now, or, no deal. So I just tell them, chase that dream, but just don't get hurt, and be real with yourself, be honest with yourself, make sure you know where you're ranked, or if you got a chance to get on that podium, get on it. It'll make you more money, it'll make us more money. So chase that dream. Ty is definitely one of those guys. There's several of them out there that I like, and that people are pretty aware of them, and they're all good people, but there's some studs coming up behind them too. So, there's always somebody else.
All right. You have been listening to Gerald Brisco. He is the class of the field. As always, we appreciate you being on the show. Can't wait to have you in Waterloo, Iowa, July 20 through 22. You always represent us so well, and we always appreciate your time being here.
Thank you, and it's always great to be there. Melissa and all your wonderful crew there at the museum. Look forward to seeing everybody there, and all my great friends in Waterloo. See you soon.
All right, that was Gerald Brisco of WWE, 2005 inductee into the George Tragos Luthez Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. Wanted to talk with Gerald about that, but then also wanted Doug just to have some time right now to reflect on the Dan Gable Celebrity Golf Tournament, your time with Stephen Neal, and what a tribute to the sport of wrestling Stephen Neal is. Again, let's just give his background. 1999 world champion, 2-time NCAA champion for Cal State Bakersfield. Didn't play a down of college football, then goes on to a 10-year career in the professional NFL with the New England Patriots. 3 Super Bowl rings. You had a chance to interact with him.
The Super Bowl rings. It was awesome to see this little kid come up there, and it was on display. And I mean, that ring is just bling to the max. And I tried it on. It was even too big for my thumb. So that gives you an idea how big Stephen Neal is.
Yeah, he's a huge dude.
And, and then that kid saw it, and his eyes were just about, a couple hours later, he had a friend that he wanted to see Stephen was out on the golf course at that time. So
sure. They
walk away very dejected. Well, he came back, and they had it out again, and they were all happy again. But it was really great, being around him on late. Let's see, it would have been late Friday, I guess.
Yeah, we
had Randy Lewis, Pete Bush, talking with Stephen Neal, and he talked about the stories.
Yeah,
that was crazy. We had a great time listening to all those. The things that I observed Thursday night. We had the party out at the
Jerry
Rolling's place,
yep.
And they had a pond out there, and they had just had a nice boat that they could go out on and go, just on a quick tour around. Well,
pontoon boat.
And Kyvan Gadsden and
Stephen Neal.
Yeah, they went out on that, just those two together. And they made 2 laps.
Cool.
And they came back in, and they stood there and talked for about another half hour on top of that. Kyvan was just picking his brain to the max.
Yep.
Well, then on Friday at the golf course again, Stephen Neal was out there, and Mark Perry cornered him. He was going to pick his brain for everything. Pretty soon you see Neal over there showing him how to do this, and he's down in the stance, and he's shooting the double, and it's like, it was just a dream come true.
Yeah,
just to see it.
To add on to that, you talk about everyone picking the brains. know that Tolly Thompson and Stephen Neal got together on Friday night. So here's two guys that wrestled in the semifinals of the NCAA championships at the Unidome in 97. Neal won that match, but they had a big rivalry, went back and forth. Each had won some matches throughout that history, but they spent 4 hours together and just traded stories, and I know they're going to continue that. So what a great way to connect.
You know, it was really interesting because Stephen Neal's daughter is an outstanding volleyball player, and Tolly Thompson has a daughter that was a 2-time All-Stater, I believe. That's
two daughters that play.
Well, yeah, but one graduated now, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so it turns out they're pretty elite players, and they're going to be meeting at a tournament down in Orlando.
Wow.
So, two big burly guys down there loving their daughters, you know.
Pretty neat.
It was neat.
Yeah, and you actually took Stephen Neal through Grundy Center, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Give him a little tour of your stomping grounds?
Yeah. I took your dad there on the way down and gave him the extended tour. So
yeah.
It took 5 minutes instead of the 3.
You got to package that as a deal for On the Mat listeners. I don't know what you would charge, maybe $100 a Ben Franklin.
I'd probably have to pay out. I would guess.
Yeah, just
here. I'll give you $20 if you go on the tour with me.
Well, no, I was thinking the opposite way. We owe you to pick your brain.
It was a blast.
Get all of that. So that had to be fun. But what a great tribute to the sport Stephen Neal is. I just thought it was a highlight to have him here in Waterloo, Iowa, and people gravitated toward him. Watching him, I didn't see a lot of downtime for him where he had a chance to be by himself. Everyone wanted to be around him. So that's fantastic. And Gerald Brisco mentioned Brock Lesnar. That was a guy that Stephen Neal beat in the 1999 NCAA tournament finals. Also beat Trent Hanick in the NCAA tournament finals in 1998, won 20-5. He just had offense, and you had to like the way that he approached the sport, not only football, but wrestling as well, because he did it in a way that's going to be very entertaining, very aggressive, and it made you want to come back for more. And I just can't say enough good about how it was to have him here.
I mean, he was open to everybody. Anybody that had any questions, he was eager to answer them. So it was good to watch him. What a great ambassador for the sport he is. I think he enjoyed being around the wrestling people all weekend.
Yep, I do too. Hey, it's been a great show. Great having Gerald Brisco on the program. Great to catch up about the Dan Gable Celebrity Golf Tournament. For Scott Pensloff, Doug Van Gelder, I'm Kyle Klingman. You've been listening to On the Mat.
You've been listening to On the Mat, the Cedar Valley's longest-running radio show devoted entirely to wrestling. Brought to you by Rolling Ford and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum on 1650 The Fan.
This show is part of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MatTalkOnline.com.